Hey guys, Congressman Cammack here in the Rotunda. We are getting ready for the swearing in, the inauguration of the 47th President, Donald J. Trump, tomorrow. Now, if you check this out behind me, we are here on the inauguration stage where Donald Trump will give his remarks and take his oath of office right here at the podium. And you can see we've got some folks that are here just checking it out. They're about to do a sound check in 5 minutes. So we wanted to just hop on the stage real fast, check it out. But I wanted to make sure that you guys were here with us for this moment. So you can see there's probably not going to be a lot of seating. It's going to be interesting to see how they fit all of us members in here. But what an exciting moment. So wanted to bring you guys along for this. Incredible. The Rotunda has absolutely been transformed. All right, more to come, but stick with us. Stay safe, stay warm.
It's back. Now I'll recognize my good friend who represents the University of Florida. I know what she's going to talk about, what she's going to highlight, I'm sure. I'll recognize her for her questioning, her 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and of course, go Gators, as always. Actually, my questions were asked earlier by my good friend, also from the Sunshine State, Representative Laurel Lee. And so now that we're towards the tail end of the committee hearing, a lot has been discussed. Certainly, I wanted to talk about digital twins, the investments the University of Florida is making. But I wanted to open up the floor to each of our witnesses because I know there's always something that gets left out of these hearings. So I'm going to start with you, Ms. Humpton. If you can maybe speak to some of the things that you wanted to cover or didn't get asked in this hearing yet today.
This has been a phenomenal conversation, and I'm looking down at my notes of things that I wanted to make sure we covered, and I'm coming up empty. Thank you for making sure that we have a comprehensive dialogue. I think the thing that I hope we all leave with today is that industrial AI is different from consumer AI. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you for all the work that you do on digital twins. It is absolutely revolutionary, and I'm very excited for the possibilities of digital twins in multiple different industries and sectors. So thank you. Mr. Kinder, I know Representative Laurel Lee, she mentioned the University of Florida and the College of Engineering. Anything that you wanted to add as part of your response to her question or expand on that? I should clarify a little bit more specifically, the importance of R&D and the investments that we have to make at the university level in order to continue pushing this type of technology.
Yes, I think thank you for the question, Congresswoman. We're very excited about the Florida partnership. Yes. I think it's going to launch this fall, I believe is the plan, for the degree program. We think bringing manufacturing techniques to the building sector will revolutionize how we build, especially housing, of which there's a critical shortage in the U.S. Our software, the training we provide, teaches students how to reduce those costs by 50%. And this is where Autodesk brings together both manufacturing and architecture, engineering, and construction. We partnered with a modular construction company in Oakland, California, to design more than 300 AI-enabled affordable housing units at about half the cost and half the time and half of the waste in the process. So we're very proud of that and look forward to working with and partnering with universities to further that type of research.
And along with that, in Congress, we're doing everything we can to make sure that the regulatory environment doesn't trip everybody up as we're innovating, and you guys are doing so much more with half the cost and half the time. We need to do it with half the regulations. So this is my shameless plug for the REINS Act right now, but thank you for that. Dr. Reynolds, I saw you flipping through your notes to make sure that there was nothing that you hadn't missed. Was there anything that you wanted to cover that we haven't touched on today?
You know, I might just reinforce a few points that I think have been made today. The first one I want to make is a sense of urgency. I think that we have an understanding that we really need to do a collaborative project here. This is going to take government, it's going to take industry, it's going to take academia, it'll take the civil society. But we have an urgent moment here because I think the U.S. is at an inflection point. And we have done so much over the last few years to rebuild this manufacturing base, to build momentum. We now have hundreds of new facilities being built. We have a whole new crop of manufacturing startups that are really changing the face, particularly in AI. All of that momentum must continue. And if we can get aligned and ensure that we don't have too much disruption or changing of the rules midstream, I think that we are really going to be able to accelerate the work here and succeed with our tipping point. And so I want to also just emphasize that that path forward is really an investment in the technology, but it's also the investment in our workers. And those together will help us do this.
Excellent, thank you. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I think the one issue that didn't come up today that I just want to mention is tax policy. And I realize this is not the tax writing committee, but everyone here is going to have an opportunity to vote on taxes at some point. The expiration of the provision in the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act that allows companies to deduct the investment that they make in research and development
Absolutely.
in the year in which that investment takes place. The expiration of that provision has been enormously harmful to the ability of companies to invest in R&D here in the U.S. Restoring that provision will be kind of the fuse that ignites
Yes.
a renaissance of investment in manufacturing and other industries here in the U.S. So that's the one thing that I'd mention.
Well, and thank you for mentioning that. As someone who represents one of the top biotech hubs and incubators in the world, the R&D tax credit deduction is absolutely important and critical to so many industries. So thank you all so much for your time and expertise today. And the future's bright. I'm so glad that we're not having a doomsdayer conversation today. So thank you. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I appreciate it very much, and that was a great move, Kat. Thank you for giving them the opportunity to elaborate on these issues. We appreciate it very much. All right, next we have, we don't have anybody on the Democrat side, oh, yes, I'm sorry, Ms. Ho Chan. She's a great, a valuable member of our committee. We're very fortunate to have her, and we'll be working on quite a few issues together.
For questions. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for holding this important hearing today, and thank you very much to our witnesses for hanging in there with us. It's always a fun experience when votes get called in the middle of a hearing, and I'm sure you appreciated the reprieve. So I know, yes, Mr. Spellmeyer, I can see you were very appreciative of the break. So as my colleagues have stated today, we are all collectively very concerned about the broadband, really the spectrum of the broadband programs are spread across the federal government. Now, according to GAO, over 130 programs at 15 different agencies. Now, I know that many of them have different standards and eligibility criteria too, and at the very least, we can make sure that they have the same requirements. Now, I tried to do this for the USDA Reconnect program last Congress with my Rural Internet Improvement Act. Mr. Spellmeyer, Mr. Hale, how should Congress try to standardize requirements for the different broadband programs across the various agencies? I would love to hear your feedback on this, and I'll start with you, Mr. Spellmeyer.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Certainly, the GAO, I think it was a GAO report
Yes.
that you just referenced, was quite eye-opening, even to those of us in the industry who are familiar with the programs, to see them all detailed. There is a need for standardization and streamlining. I think part of my answer to that would be conduct a review, do it through regular order here in the committee, figure out what the programs are. Congress has a habit of, throwing one program on over here, and then somebody else throws it over there, and pretty soon you've got 113 programs. I think it would be useful to streamline and combine some of those. Some of them are no longer, I think, completely relevant.
Right. So consolidation.
My message earlier was let's streamline the BEAD program and get back to work, putting fiber in the ground and using the other technologies that are out there.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Hale.
Yeah, I would agree that they should be streamlined. It would be helpful to have a common definition, a well-thought-out definition of what broadband needs are currently as well into the future. We talked about the programs a little bit earlier, and just to clarify, the USF is not appropriated. That is the essential program to make sure that networks are built, sustained, and remain affordable. And then, of course, the BEAD programs, the grant programs come along for a greater capital infusion when you still got market failure areas where USF doesn't work. So a combination, the USF program would be the best place to establish those guidelines, those standards, and, if USDA has some projects which have been very helpful in closing the digital divide, if they could be the same standards, that would be perfect.
Thank you. And Mr. Donovan, what about wireless?
Well, I think it's important to recognize with those different programs that there is an inherent difference in fixed connectivity and mobile. And Americans want to have access at home, but also on their devices as you're not connected to a fixed connection. And so making sure that you don't lump those different programs together and you need you need both of them to have those two different uses and purposes. And as my colleague mentioned, of looking at also the difference of what is a deployment program versus what is a program to sustain that employment. Because ultimately there's no future-proof technology of any kind if there isn't sustained investment to keep it going.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Spellmeyer, NTIA added some pretty onerous labor requirements to BEAD. Now, do you think that these requirements make it easier or harder to find skilled workers needed to build these broadband networks?
Well, there is no doubt in my mind that they make it significantly more difficult to find skilled workers. And I should have added in response to your first question, I think the other thing you have to sort out is what agency is going to administer what program. That's a real challenge.
Well, and kind of going back to what you said, Mr. Donovan, would you agree that the requirements that we're trying to create some uniformity for across the broadband program should apply and have some, maybe synchronicity isn't the right word, but there should be some sort of mirror in the wireless realm?
Yes, and it should be based on what consumers are actually expecting to receive. It's a big problem we have in the current 5G fund at the FCC is that there's an artificially low speed threshold. It means that you're not going to deliver.
You don't say. It's like dial-up speed.
We could use your help fixing that before the program moves forward.
Well, on behalf of basically every American in the United States, we will do everything possible to increase the upload-download speeds that are so desperately needed to be updated. So thank you all so much for your time. My time has expired. I yield.
Gentlelady, now I recognize Miss Cammack. Miss Cammack, my fellow Florida Gator. I'll recognize her for 5 minutes of questioning.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today as we examine the many dangers that exist in what some have rightly called the Wild West of the internet. Today's hearing, the World Wide Web, examining harms online, could not be more timely. From exploitation to manipulation, we know that the internet has become a breeding ground for serious threats, especially to those most vulnerable, our kids. I want to begin by personally apologizing to the parents and the guests here in the committee room today for the behavior of some of my colleagues. We are here to focus on kids and the issue at hand, not play liberal catchphrase, talk about food prices, or talk about billionaires. Anything that deviates from that is politically motivated, and it is disgusting. And I am so sorry that you are in this room championing this issue because you have had an experienced tragedy in your family. I am so very sorry. And I hope that my colleagues will apologize. For me personally, I want to focus on the most disturbing and deeply personal harms facing some people online. I don't want to talk about employment status from a former commissioner. I want to talk about the kids that are facing these tragedies. So I'm going to start with you, Ms. Hawkins. Online platforms are fueling the wildfire spread of non-consensual intimate images, including the AI-generated deepfakes, which have been talked about here today. There is zero accountability. Do you believe that Congress should hold these platforms liable, and I'm using the word liable deliberately, when they knowingly allow this kind of harmful content to stay up? And what kind of enforcement tools do we have in our toolbox? Because there is, in fact, more than one. So for the record, would you please describe?
I'll say that if we upload a clip from Disney, a Disney movie, it's removed immediately by big tech. But if sexual abuse is uploaded, the most horrific moments in our lives are uploaded to the internet, it's monetized and it garners thousands of views and downloads and shares. There's so much that we can do, but as long as tech has no incentive to listen to survivors, to remove this material, we will see no change. The Take It Down Act would do that significantly, but so too would sunsetting CDA 230. This committee almost called for that last year. The problem right now is tech is not coming to the table. We must have them at the table to negotiate and figure out the right solution.
I agree with you, and I'm disappointed to hear that all of a sudden one side is against big tech when all along this has been a bipartisan issue. We have seen conservatives censored online. We have seen progressive voices censored online. There has been a collective call for reform with the big tech companies, and this is another example where we can come together in a bipartisan way, in this case, to protect our kids, especially online. And beyond the FTC, because there seems to be a lot of focus on former Commissioner Slaughter's employment status, can you talk about the FTC, but also the partners in order to enforce how we go about holding the companies accountable, taking the content down? How do we help give our survivors and the victims resources?
I'm not an expert on the FTC, but from what I understand, and I've seen, is we don't have the laws on the books right now for us to protect children online. It's not strong enough. Congress must act. Right now, we need, there's so much to say to that. One thing I want to transition and explain too is the app stores. Right now, that's the gateway. Almost all of our youth, the content that they're consuming is through the app stores. We can see such significant progress if we just make them accountable and provide parental opportunities.
Absolutely, and I think there is a coalition of apps that are working on this and other issues in the periphery, which will be very beneficial. I want to jump to the state laws that are currently on the books, and we know that as every state continues to add the laws, it becomes this patchwork deal where Congress will be forced to act, and we do need to act, and I agree with the chairman that yes, we will take action, and we are willing to go it alone if need be, because this is the right thing to do for parents, for families, and for kids. But almost every state currently has laws on the books today that protect people from non-consensual imagery. But 20 states are now only covering deepfake specifically. Now, given that, talk about at what point is the tipping point for Congress to step in?
The reality is that those laws largely only focus on the initial creation and upload of the material. And what we know is immediately once this material is uploaded, again, thousands of views, maybe within hours, countless downloads. And it's quite inefficient. Congress brings efficiency here, and we need more, energy, and we need a solution that holds the tech companies that forces them to listen to us when this is happening to us.
Well, and I know my time has expired, so I will yield, but I also say thank you for being here in the face of threats to stand up for kids and for families. Thank you.
Thank you. We all.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in strong support. As a woman and as the chairwoman of the Republican Women's Caucus, not only just for election integrity, but clearly literacy, because y'all have not read the bill. That much is clear. This bill is very, very simple. It ensures that only American citizens can vote in our federal elections. This isn't hard. 87% of Americans agree that only Americans should vote in our elections. So it makes me wonder, why are my friends on the other side of the aisle always consistently looking for ways to ensure that illegals can vote in our elections? It's almost as though they have an ulterior motive. You have to show an ID to board a plane, to buy alcohol, to cash a check. You have to show an ID to buy cold medicine, for God's sakes. Why should people not have to verify their citizenship to register? And I say to register because my friend over here keeps pointing out that women in every single congressional district will have to provide proof of their name change in order to vote. Folks, read the bill, page 14. If you are registering to vote, there is a process by which the states establish. If you are already registered to vote, you are fine. Read the bill. Stop insulting women. I am sick and tired, and I know women across this country are sick and tired of being talked down to and being insulted repeatedly with the fear-mongering tactics of the left. It is disingenuous for them to stand there and continue to say that women will not be eligible to vote. This is about protecting one of our most sacred rights that we have as Americans. And I am so proud to stand here as a woman, as a married woman, and again, as the chair of the Republican Women's Caucus, in safeguarding and ensuring the integrity of our elections. I urge my colleagues to do the same.
Time is expired.
I yield an additional 15
The
seconds.
gentleman from Wisconsin yields her an additional
30
15 seconds. Thank you.
I can keep preaching for an additional 30. The point is that Americans around this country are sick and tired of the fear-mongering tactics that they have been subjected to by the left for decades. We need to ensure the integrity of our elections. It has been demanded by the American people, and we're making good on that promise today. I urge my colleagues to support the SAVE Act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Expired. Gentleman from Wisconsin reserves this time. Just
seeking recognition for an opening statement, gentlelady from Florida. You are recognized for 3 minutes. Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all my colleagues. This is going to be a very, very long, well, possibly 36 hours. With that in mind, I think it's just important to lay out that we've heard a lot today in the last few hours that is not rooted in reality, because the facts tell a much different story. The posters that our colleagues on the left have held up are touching, the stories, they're very emotional, and I agree that we want to protect those most vulnerable. As a pregnant woman, I want to make sure that pregnant women, expectant mothers, have access to resources around the country. Unfortunately, that's not happening in this situation. You know, I don't want to say that they're lying, but not a single person in those posters is going to be impacted by this legislation. Not one. Not one. And I encourage you to read the bill if you don't believe me. The facts are in black and white. I heard from one of my colleagues that there's just not enough waste, fraud, and abuse to reform the programs, to shore up resources. Well, I guess math is a problem, because I see 7.6 million different waste, fraud, and abuse cases. 1.4 million illegals that are currently on the rolls. 1.2 million individuals who are ineligible. An ineligibility definition that they created. The left made that definition. And by their own definition, these individuals, 1.2 million of them, are ineligible for the program. And let us not forget the 4.8 million able-bodied adults, healthy adults, that choose not to work. They have no children, they have no dependents. They choose not to work. That's 7.6 million individuals, and not one of those were on those posters. We all agree we want to protect those most vulnerable in our communities. We want to protect the disabled. We want to protect pregnant women. We should not be diverting resources to those who make the choice not to work. That is something we can all agree on. So I think the facts tell a much different story than the fiction that is playing out, and we would all be in a better position to shore up these programs and protect them if we could just realize that there is fundamental flaws in the arguments of my colleagues on the left. So for the next 36 hours, we will continue to point out the flaws in their arguments. It's rooted in emotion, and that gets clicks. But right now, we have 7.6 million individuals who should never be on this program. They're ineligible by their own definitions, by their own standards, or they're in this country illegally, or they make the choice not to work. For those that need it most, we are protecting and fighting for them. That is what we are doing here today. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Gentlelady yields back.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to enter into the record.
Gentlelady from Florida, Representative Cammack, for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Kennedy, for being here. I know that this has been a bit of an interesting morning, but I do appreciate your commitment to the initiative to make America healthy again, as well as all the other reforms that you're looking to initiate. As someone who represents a very large and rural district in Florida and cares deeply about access to care, especially for our underserved communities, I've seen the good that HHS can do, but I've also seen where the bureaucracy falls short in helping people, particularly in rural areas. So I'm encouraged significantly by your willingness and efforts to restructure the department. Now, I know that there are many broken systems within HHS, and it's going to take a disruptor. And sir, you are a disruptor, and that's what we need in these times, because so many people, especially here in Congress, they want to maintain the same broken status quo. I think collectively as Americans, whether you're Republican or Democrat, we can agree that we have sick care in this country, not health care. And the culture has been all about maintenance rather than prevention. And so I appreciate all of your efforts in working to try to address that. So I'm just going to jump right in. As you know, Secretary Kennedy, under the previous administration of Joe Biden, maternal health deserts expanded significantly, leaving over 2.5 million women without access to any sort of maternal health care. In fact, I believe it was 1 in 25 maternal health clinics closed under the previous administration. And you've pointed out that there are more than 40 different maternal health programs scattered across HHS. So from where I sit, that sounds like a lot of bureaucracy, and I want us to focus on patient outcomes and improving those, such as like you do. So walk us through how you're planning on streamlining and making a more coordinated effort to deliver healthcare to moms and moms to be around the country.
Yeah, I mean, this is a priority for President Trump. It's a priority for me personally. We have a maternal health crisis in this country. It disproportionately impacts minorities. Black mothers have a 2.6 times greater chance of dying in childbirth. A black mother with a college education has 2.6 times greater chance of dying in childbirth than a white mother with a high school education. So it's impacting those communities, but it's impacting every American. And we need to protect our moms, we need to protect our kids, and we need to do a lot better. So, and we intend to do that in this administration.
Well, as someone who is 8 weeks out from delivery, I know you can't see it because I'm so short, but I appreciate that, and I look forward to working with you so we can streamline these services so moms can get the help and access to resources they need. Changing gears a little bit here, the DHS Inspector General has confirmed for us what so many of us have known for a long time, that under the Biden-Harris administration, HHS, which is responsible for unaccompanied children, they lost track of over 340,000 unaccompanied migrant children. They failed to vet sponsors, and they blocked law enforcement from getting critical information to ensure the safety of these children. Now, we know several investigative reports, both from government sources and outside, have reported that these kids were sent to unsafe addresses, even non-existent ones. They were exposed to trafficking and exploitation, and many of them have not been found to this day. Now, I know you've had a lot on your plate. It's been a crazy 6 months, but I know this is a top priority for HHS. So like so many other things that you've been tasked with cleaning up, what specific steps is HHS taking to restore the accountability, improve the sponsor vetting, and ensure that law enforcement can do its job to protect these children and find these children?
I mean, one of the major reason that the Biden administration lost track of all those children is because they were emphasizing speed over security. And there were political reasons for that. They wanted to get the kids out of U.S. custody, so they were handing them off to anybody. They didn't require background checks. They didn't require identification even. I've watched horror stories of the same person picking up child after child after child, using different names and different addresses. One of the addresses was a strip club. One of the addresses was a parking lot. One of the addresses was an empty lot that was filled with shipping containers. And this character was getting all these kids. One person got 42 kids to one address. What we're doing now is DNA testing on every sponsor. We're doing personal identification. We're doing background checks, and we're doing income verification.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, my time has
The
expired.
gentlelady's time has expired. The chair now recognizes.
Lady yields. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Cammack, for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our second panel of witnesses for appearing here today. Now, as everyone knows, this committee has been investigating corruption from Oregon contractors for more than a year. In fact, I was in the last hearing that we had on this, and it was quite a contentious hearing. One issue that's pretty close to my heart is ensuring equal access for life-saving transplants for patients with disabilities. Just last month, the House passed a bipartisan bill that I was proud to lead alongside my friend and colleague, Debbie Dingell, to end organ transplant discrimination against individuals with disabilities. So it is with total horror that I read a recent investigative report highlighting one of the most horrific cases of patient abuses. The New York Times detailed what happened to Misty Hawkins last year. She was a vibrant woman in Alabama who loved movies and dancing, but she also had a lifelong cognitive disability. After a tragic incident, Misty's mother agreed to organ donation. And I'm quoting from the report here about what happened next. Quote, "A surgeon made an incision in her chest and sawed through her breastbone. Doctors discovered that her heart was still beating. She appeared to be breathing. They were slicing into Miss Hawkins while she was still alive." Now, this is not the first time that something like this has happened. In 2021, a doctor filed a case report about a woman with Down syndrome who was in an operating room being treated as an organ donor. During the harvesting of her organs, staff realized that her aortic and renal arteries were pumping and pulsing. In other words, she was not dead. The patient was given powerful drugs, fentanyl and lorazepam, and then, according to the doctor filing the case report, 18 minutes after she was first pronounced dead, she was pronounced dead a second time. This is something that you would see in the movies, but unfortunately, we're seeing real-world examples of this today. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Formica. As a physician, I'm sure you are as horrified as I am. Were you invited to participate in the hearing on organ transplants last year?
I was invited, yes.
Why did you not appear?
I was given about 4 days' notice and couldn't get away from my clinical responsibilities.
I understand. Now, we discussed this back then, but I want to bring it to you now. HRSA's report included two particularly damaging conclusions about the federal organ contractor assigned to Kentucky, including, quote, its failure to recognize neurologic function inconsistent or unfavorable for organ donation, and its failure to work collaboratively with patients' primary medical teams. If there are reasons to believe that some organ contractors are failing to recognize neurologic function issues inconsistent with organ donation, in other words, the patients could never recover or they were not suitable for organ donation, then I'm even more concerned about what that means for care given to patients with disabilities. Are you tracking with me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
I
so
share your concern about the patients with disabilities.
And you're under oath, so I want you to very clearly detail if you have heard of other reports similar to this with the very basic failures that have been outlined in what I have said.
The reports I've heard, I've read that New York Times article. I shared your, I don't even know the verbs to put in there, so I won't do that. I've heard from HRSA secondhand that there's other cases. I have never been given the primary data for those.
Really?
Yeah, no, really. We have not been given access to the primary cases. We were told that they were happening. I haven't seen them. I haven't seen the only thing I know about the index case, which we're discussing here, is the HRSA report. The OPTN was not given the data for that one. We were told not to review that case.
And just so we have this on the record, you recently, you have since left, but you were the president.
I was the president up until June 30th, yes.
Okay. Now, you're aware of the bipartisan report from our friends in the Senate that found that the Miami OPO, for example, recovered organs from a donor before the donor's heart stopped against the family's wishes.
I've heard that case, yes. I haven't.
But you just said that you really hadn't.
I haven't seen primary data on that, Congresswoman. So I've heard these cases. I can tell you that the Miami OPO has been under review with the OPTN, and the last My last act as a president with my board was to send a letter to the secretary asking for assistance in managing that case.
But I mean, the report is public, so I mean, you're.
Congressman, I've heard these, I know what you're saying, I've heard these cases, but I don't have any primary data. I've been a spectator to those
I'm sure
cases
that
as
brings
well.
the families of these individuals great comfort that you haven't seen primary data, despite the fact that many of these reports are public record. I mean, this is outrageous that this is happening in the United States. This is the stuff that you hear in third world countries. I mean, it's clear that a 40-year experiment of letting organ contractors police themselves has left our most vulnerable neighbors to endure unimaginable abuse and torture. So I think it's clear that a lot more work has to be done here. While I appreciate your time here, I think many of the answers have left us with a lot more questions than answers. So with that, my time has expired, Mr. Chairman.
Nice. The gentlelady from Florida, Congresswoman Cammack, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses for being with us today. I really do appreciate the commentary that has been put forth today. It is a vital topic. As the lone representative for the entire state of Florida, being a very large ag state and production state, it's critical. So thank you. I'll start with you, Mr. Cameron. As you stated in your testimony, IR4 is a key resource for our specialty crop producers, and as so many of you know, Florida is home to 300 specialty crops, so something that is near and dear to our hearts. Can you share with us some of the breakthrough innovations over the last few years that has enabled?
I apologize, I don't have specific results for you, but I do know that this has been a very successful program. We haven't had to deal at our location with products that have gone through the IR4 process, although we are dealing with, I take that back, we are running tests currently through the IR4 program for a pesticide that is used in some of the other commodity crops that we're trying on processing tomatoes. We want to see if there's a fit, seeing if we can control thrips early season, so that we can get control where we usually don't have products that fit that need. So it is getting to the farm. Maybe some other farms, possibly more, but we're always looking for new solutions.
Well, and I know you've touched on this a little bit today, Mr. Cameron, but talk a little bit about the role that Congress can play explicitly, just so folks back home can really understand the role that we here can have in making sure that our producers, particularly as it relates to specialty crops, have access to safe and effective crop protection options. And you can talk through regulatory reform, research investments, or other means, but really for the folks back home, what is the most important thing Congress can be doing?
Well, I think many times specialty crops get left out of the mix. We know that
Preach.
That many.
Thank you. Amen.
No, we realize that, let's face it, the commodity crops that have millions of acres, it's a bigger market, gets more attention. In California, we have crops that you may only have 100 acres, 200 acres in very small specific crops that are being grown. And they're totally uncovered. They don't have the crop protection chemicals because nobody has pursued the label. That makes it very difficult to grow crops similar to, very small plots when you compare it to the rest of the nation. So we always do need like an IR4 program. We need Section 18, Section 24s, where we have local needs that we can actually bring certain products into those situations. But many times it takes a long time to develop those. It's emergency situations, even for larger minor crops. So any help we could get, either in funding for research to where we can develop a label for some of these minor crops. I mentioned earlier my neighbor planted agave, low water use. We'll see how that works out, but absolutely no products can legally be used on that crop for crop protection. So anything you can do for funding to get into the IR4 program, the FAR program, to where we can actually see results in the field, in growers' hands, is invaluable.
Okay, I appreciate that, Mr. Cameron. I'm going to go to you, Mr. Witherby. As you know, the Asian citrus fly has decimated our citrus growers in Florida, really and across the country. Have you performed any research on whether a sterile insect technique could be applicable in combating citrus greening?
It's a little tougher mechanism of action, unfortunately. It could help. You start to suppress the amount of insects that are available to link up to the orange, and then you can decrease greening. It's a bigger problem, and so it's one of those where it would require research. It's also, we know it's important, but it's also a specialty crop where, you know, the return on investment is really tough. And so that's part of it is funding that would go into a lot of that research for new technologies. Just hasn't been there. It has been in some cases, but this is where over the years, like I said, the delays that would take to get it, even if it was emergency use, would be really tough to get something new into that industry very quickly.
Well, I think you're making the case as to why the research dollars are so critically important, and of course, we're very proud of the fact that the Farm Bill includes another 5 years worth of funding to combat citrus greening, because you can't have Florida without oranges, right? So, thank you. My time has expired, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Florida Representative Cammack for her 5 minutes of questions. And a new mama, by the way. Congratulations.
Thank you. A new mama who's actually got to go pump, so I'll make this quick. So thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you to my wonderful colleagues for letting me jump the line, and to our witnesses for being here. This is really important as we're grappling with all the new technology and all the opportunities, but also some of the challenges along with it. So we know that healthcare and AI have incredible opportunities and potential. We're seeing it speed up drug development, cutting down on paperwork, and giving the doctors and patients more time, which is really the upside, the good side that has been talked about at length here today. I really do appreciate a lot of the commentary on data privacy as well. So when we're talking about these potentials, we need to also examine the downsides, which few have been highlighted here today. We all agree that AI should never replace a doctor's judgment, and it shouldn't become another way for bureaucrats, or swamp creatures as I call them, or big corporations to pull strings. Patients deserve to know that their data is safe, their privacy is respected, and that their care is being guided by people, not just algorithms. So in my district, the University of Florida, AKA the Everything School, we are testing some of the most exciting applications of AI, from digital twins of ICU units to patient-level models that help predict the most effective treatments and outcomes in tough cases like cancer. We're showing what's possible. So I want to highlight that, but also talk to you guys about some data privacy issues that we're wrestling with. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Ibrahim. As I mentioned, my district, University of Florida, Gator Nation. I keep having to say that, you know, lots of national titles, 5 in the country. Just putting that out there for my fellow SEC friends here on the committee. Researchers are using digital twins to not just replicate hospital units like the ICU and operating rooms, but also to model individual patient trajectories in complex cases like cancer or intensive care. How close are we to seeing this type of patient-level digital twin technology guiding real-time treatment decisions nationwide? And beyond direct care, what role do you see digital twins playing in education and training, particularly for providers in smaller or rural hospitals who don't have access to some of this cutting-edge technology?
Thank you so much for the question, and I'll keep my Big Ten thoughts to myself. The importance of this technology in rural communities is incredibly important. And in our own program, we've done discounted rates to help ensure that rural hospitals can participate. About 25% of our hospitals are in rural communities. And they're often partnering with large communities, or large hospitals, so they can have some coordination of care and triaging and sharing of expertise. Your question about our ability to identify better treatment plans for patients is super important. One of the things we've spent a lot of time on is finding diagnoses that potentially could have been caught sooner or weren't identified initially. One example was hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, where we've looked back in old EKGs and rerun our models and found that for many patients, we could have diagnosed years earlier. So I think in the current state, we have the ability to diagnose things faster I think the future state you described, that we could actually tailor a unique novel treatment, I think that's in its infancy. It's certainly in the pipeline and horizon, but I think today we can point to that we are able to diagnose people faster. How well we can tailor the treatment is still nascent, but coming very quickly.
How soon do you expect the digital twin technology utilizing someone's medical history, their chart, their DNA, biometrics, how soon do you see that being regular and commonplace?
I think for common conditions, because the hitch of these models is having enough patients to train on. So for common conditions, I think that's very plausible within the next year or two, and there's probably some pilots that already exist. For more rare conditions, nuanced, novel cancers and things, I think we're more than a couple years away.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to go to you, Mr. Toy. As we talked about, UF is pioneering immune system digital twins to personalize treatment and developing synthetic data that allows AI to train without risking patient privacy. From your perspective, can synthetic data and patient-level digital twins serve as a foundation for fair coding and care management across payers? And also, what safeguards are needed to ensure that they don't become tools that privatize patient data or constrain physician judgment?
Yes, absolutely. So a very interesting question. So number one, doing the second part first, I think there's a lot of privacy implications around digital twin technology. There's a lot of upside, but literally if you are making a digital twin of yourself, you probably want to know how that's going to be used.
It's a little scary.
Right, so it can be a little scary. So I think the answer is we haven't solved all of that yet, but there are technologies that will help with this. So I think that what's probably going to end up happening is you're not making a full twin as in it's literally my thing moving around and being used. That's going to have too many privacy implications, but it's going to be sort of like a collective model of people who are kind of like me that can then be analyzed and processed. So I have fewer privacy concerns.
Okay, and I know my time has expired, but I'll submit for the record some questions about de-anonymization of data and some of the honest broker questions that surround that. But thank you all so much for your time, and thank you to my colleagues again for your understanding. Thank you. I yield.
Gentlewoman yields.
Gentlewoman from Florida for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of our witnesses for being here today. Mr. Wright, it is good to see you. Go Gators. I'm disappointed, no orange and blue tie. Dr. Fontes, he's repping for you, though.
It's blue. The doctor and I, we coordinated today for you.
I appreciate that, even though I know we had a little bit of a rough weekend, and I heard my colleague, Representative Castor, was giving us a bit of grief, but we're Gators. So
but we appreciate her sensitivity to the Gator Nation.
That's right, that's right. But I also want to acknowledge all our first responders in the room. Thank you all so much for your service and for your family's service. As the wife of a firefighter, SWAT medic, I know firsthand what it is like, and so deeply grateful for everything that y'all do. I'm also disappointed in some of the very divisive and partisan language that I just heard from my colleague on the other side of the aisle. Emergency communications, it is not a Republican or a Democrat issue. It is an American issue. And so I'm just a little disappointed that it has to turn into a food fight, but we're here because we have a real issue that we have to solve. We need to figure out a way to update our systems. And as a Floridian, I've seen time and time again how vital our reliable communications are during a disaster, and truly how scary it can be when they go down. So whether it's a hurricane knocking on our door that is taking out our power and cell sites, or federal and local responders struggling to operate on the same systems, these gaps can really mean the difference between life or death. Certainly as someone who represents a district that saw 3 major hurricanes in the span of 13 months, we know this firsthand. Of course, Florida faces unique challenges, from protecting our seniors in rural communities to keeping millions of our visitors safe every year. This conversation on strengthening public safety communications, whether it's 911 systems, FirstNet, or other tools, it is critical. So having worked those storms, I can say confidently that we need to take an above all approach when it comes to building out the systems, updating them, and building in redundancies. I'm so excited for today's conversation because it is something that is long overdue. We need a system that is resilient, interoperable, and secure when it comes to the issues and communications that matter most. So I'm going to start with you, Sheriff. One of the promises that NextGen 911 it has is the ability to transmit text, images, video, and location data directly to first responders in the field. I can't tell you how many times my husband has been on one system, and he's a city, he works for the city, but then the county's operating on a different system, and maybe there's a mutual aid call coming in from a neighboring county. Some are on slurs, some are on a different bandwidth. It's tough, and I can tell you firsthand some of the challenges that we've seen with FirstNet in our rural communities. So what steps can Congress take to ensure nationwide interoperability amongst all of the different networks that our first responders operate on so that they can move seamlessly amongst jurisdictions, especially during large-scale disasters?
Well, your example with your husband is very pertinent to this when you're talking about even between fire, sheriff's departments, and police departments. So interoperability by having that common platform, being FirstNet or Broadband just for public safety, is first and foremost. A lot of the modern technologies, both in our handheld radios as well as when we use our cell phones to talk to each other, have the ability to automatically recognize jurisdictional boundaries and then make those connections. Some of it can be done in our dispatch centers. There's technology that allows two disparate radio systems to be plugged in, and now they can turn around and communicate with each other. I think ensuring simple, straightforward technologies like that and providing really the governance and policy language from the federal level across the board will allow us to standardize to make sure that we continue to move in the direction you're describing.
I love that. I love that, especially since these are very expensive systems. You've got people investing millions and millions of dollars to upgrade their system only to find that they can't communicate just even a few counties over, so that's really important. And then my next question is gonna be on FirstNet. So the FirstNet Authority recently held a workshop in our district to solicit feedback on the priorities from our first responders. In the most recent storm, the minute I got out of my home county, Alachua County, heading west towards the hurricane where it had hit the hardest, my husband immediately lost coverage. I don't have FirstNet, and I didn't have coverage. So this is something that I brought to their attention. Now, I understand that these individuals are best positioned to help guide infrastructure needs in our communities, but how has your experience been in getting the infrastructure placed where you need it in an emergency situation as it relates to FirstNet?
In terms of the portability of like FirstNet mobile towers and things like that, it's good, they respond. However, what you're talking about is the physical tower itself and going down, and that's what your husband experienced.
Right.
Number one, construction standards, making these things resilient. Also calling it is what it is, critical infrastructure across the United States, securing it, maintaining it, and monitoring it.
And I know I'm over my time, but at some point I would like to get on the record some commentary on redundancies and moving away from singular prime towers. I think that is a disaster in the making, so I'll follow up with all of you, but thank you again for each of you being here today. Appreciate you. And go Gators. Hey guys, good morning. It is Congresswoman Kat Cammack, and it is day 12 of the government shutdown. I'm on the road. Don't worry, I am not driving. Actually, Barry is driving and Jessica's in the front seat. Actually, I'm gonna flip this around. Hello, Jessica. And we got Barry. And it is Monday, it's Columbus Day, so it's a holiday. Everything, well, we're shut down, so it's shut down. But just because it's day 12 of the government shutdown does mean that we are shut down. We're actually out on the road in the district working as we always are. When people say, oh, you're on vacation, that's funny because I haven't been on vacation in a very long time, but we are so glad that we are back home, district working, and really doing the things that matter. So first and foremost, I would be remiss if I did not mention how incredible today is in terms of the victory that was secured, which is the release of the hostages. For years, we have been demanding the release of the hostages that were savagely, brutally taken from their homes and their homeland in October 7th. And one of the things that I think every single American, and I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, it does not matter what your political affiliation is, you should be incredibly proud of the fact that your president, the president of the United States, Donald Trump, secured the release of the remaining hostages and ended the war. That is something everyone can get behind, and that is peace. And so it is a really, really remarkable day. As we speak, he is in the Knesset, which is the Israeli parliament, delivering his remarks. And there has been a number of world leaders and leaders from around the region in the Middle East that have gone to help be a part of this historic moment. And so I think it is an incredible moment to reflect on the importance that the role that the United States of America played in helping secure peace. And my heart goes out to all of those families who are finally seeing their loved ones, hugging them, loving on them for the first time in 2 years. And the videos that are coming out, I mean, they'll make you cry, certainly. And so what an incredible, incredible day. So while President Trump is over in Israel at the Knesset delivering remarks right now, I also want to flag that the 15th, which would be Wednesday of this week, would have been the first paycheck that our troops would have gone without. But rather than let our military be used as political pawns, President Trump took the unilateral action of shuffling some money around and is making sure that our troops get paid. This is incredible. This is important. And thank you, President Trump, for that, because as I have said repeatedly, our military, our troops should never, ever, ever be used as political pawns in any sort of game. And what we have seen is a refusal of the left to bring forward a bill that would prohibit the use of troops being used as pawns in government shutdowns. This has been going on for years. We have introduced this bill. The left has said no. And so it's just been really, really, really frustrating that we've tried to get this done and it just hasn't ever been able to get done. But that is no longer an issue. So President Trump has got our military paid, so folks don't have to worry about that. In the meantime, we are working on trying to get our Coast Guard and other members of Homeland Security covered. And so I have a feeling that there will be an announcement on that soon. I heard a pundit this morning, and it really pissed me off, because they said something to the effect of, it's very strange that President Trump paid the military because it basically takes away a pain point in the negotiations with the Democrats to get a deal with the Democrats. And they were so baffled by the fact that the president was wanting to get our military paid. And I had to actually pause it for a second, because I thought it was, sorry guys, my hair is absolutely nuts today. It blew my mind, because it's the same old mentality of the DC establishment, the DC political class, that, oh, well, we're just gonna, we don't care who gets hurt in the process so long as we make a point, right? That is tired. That is America last. That is a disgusting mentality to have. And if the Democrats thought that was going to be a pain point that we were going to allow to continue, they were sadly mistaken. So, thank you once again, President Trump, for getting our troops paid. And for everyone who is Homeland Security under that umbrella, please know that we are working to try to make sure that also gets taken care of before anyone misses a paycheck. Because ultimately, again, what this comes down to, this government shutdown, and I don't care how many people want to say it's about whatever else they think it is, look at what the Democrats put in writing. They want $200 billion for illegals to get health care. $200 billion. It's in black and white, page 57, section 2141 of the Democrat counterproposal. It says right there that they want to put back in place what they had done previously, which allowed illegals in 14 different states to collect health insurance benefits. We will not be doing that under any circumstances. So I think that at some point there needs to be a recognition that the America Last policies are gone. And right now, the only thing that will be tolerated is America and Americans first. So that is, again, the situation we find ourselves in. I know that many people still continue to say, oh, Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the White House. Yes, we do. But this is again, going back to, civics class. And if you missed that day in school, just a friendly reminder that you need 60 votes in the Senate in order to pass a bill. So that requires 7 Democrats because we have 53 Republicans. We need 7 Democrats in order to pass this bill. And the bill is the same bill that the Democrats have voted for 4 times previously. 4 times. And so, again, if they want to say, they being the left, if they want to say, oh, this is about health care, well, there was nothing but space, time, and opportunity for them to fix their broken healthcare system that they created. Let us not forget Obamacare, aka the Affordable Care Act, which is not affordable because we all know that premiums since the enactment of Obamacare have gone up more than 6 times. They created this system. They broke the previous system. And now they have to keep throwing money at it, hoping that all the problems go away, but they don't. That is, again, the same old tired mentality of Washington establishment of let's just keep throwing money at a problem and hope it goes away. It doesn't. And so we're not going to perpetuate a broken system that is expensive and delivers worse care than what we know we are capable of delivering. And that is an entirely separate conversation, entirely different piece of legislation, multiple pieces of legislation actually. And it's just one of those things where, again, you see that the left, they hate the man in the White House more than they love their country. And until people recognize that we are not going to cave on our America First promise, that is never going to change. And so I'm happy to take any questions. I just wanted to pop on here and let you guys know kind of what was going on in the world. And that's the big highlights of what's happening right now. I mean, it is a historic day globally when you think about what President Trump has done and is doing. And then, of course, here at home on the domestic front, getting people paid and really making sure that we are putting Americans first, and that the left is not going to dictate the path forward at this moment. And again, this is the same bill that they have voted for 4 times previously. They had no problem with it before, but all of a sudden they do now. And the thing that they are asking for, again, is health care for illegals. You cannot deny it. It is in their counter proposal. And if you want to look it up, I encourage you to do so. It is page 57, section 2141. You can find that at speaker.gov, where they have highlighted that section of their counter proposal. And with that, I'm going to take any questions that I can find in here. Miss Deborah says, what's to stop them from doing the same thing next time if you give in this time? Nothing. They know that if they wait long enough, they'll win. Don't let them win. Oh, you know what, Deborah? You just reminded me of something. As we speak, this is day 12 of the government shutdown. The Democrats are on their way to Napa for a fundraiser. Yeah, at a hotel that is $1,100 a night. Now, I don't know about y'all, but that is very much outside my price range for a hotel. I'm more of a, like a Holiday Inn type person, Fairfield Inn Suites. It's more our speed, but it's pretty interesting that they have been standing on the steps of the Capitol demanding that we open the government back up, and where are the Republicans and where are all these? Well, I'm in my district working, and they're in California raising money at a hotel that is $1,100 a night. Very swanky little wine tastings. Again, don't listen to what they say, just watch what they do. And they will tell you everything that you need to know about them through their actions. But we're actually pulling up to our first stop of the day. And so I'm going to have to pop off here. But very excited, meeting with some local manufacturers here in the district. And yeah, thank y'all so much. Appreciate it. And we'll be talking to you soon.